Hello, everyone. Welcome to Have a Dadbod podcast, episode number 1. Brain food. That's what we're going to talk about today. Brain food. That good stuff, right? It's like catnip for your brain. But no, welcome to Have a Dadbod podcast. My name is Chris Zach, reporting to you here from San Diego, California. This podcast is about accepting that it's okay to have a dad bod. But having a dad bod mind is not okay. So we talk about life. We talk about music. We talk about parenting. We talk about faith. We talk about real stuff. So I'm excited. Episode 1, numero uno, brain food. So we're going to talk about brain food. I wanted to talk about this topic for a lot of different reasons. If you think about brain food is those nutrients that we feed our soul. And we don't realize it, but what we feed our brain is so important. And so I'm going to get into it a little bit here. Talk about brain food and what it looks like for me on a daily basis. I'd love to get your guys' questions, comments, concerns. You can always shoot us a DM, send us a message on Facebook, whatever works best for you. Have a Dad Bod podcast. That is our handle on everything. A handle being, that's our username. Brain food. Here's an interesting statistic for you. Swallow this. Every single day, we have anywhere between 12,000 and 60,000 thoughts per day. 12,000 to 60,000 thoughts per day. That's crazy. Now, here's something even crazier. Of those thoughts, 80% are negative, and 95% of those thoughts were exactly the same repetitive thoughts as the day before. So think about that. 80% of your thoughts are negative. How do we operate with that? We only win 20% of the battles in our minds. So I want to explore that. So if you think about it, you wake up every single day and you start immediately having decisions to make, right? I always love thinking about decisions and choices and how it's been difficult. The decisions, we have so many choices. We have the ability to make choices so fast. You go to the grocery store, how many decisions do you have to make choosing peanut butter? There's 40 different peanut butters you have to choose. You go online, there's 30 different options of every single product. Do you want 2-day shipping, 1-day shipping, 6-hour shipping, 2-hour shipping, 1-hour shipping? So we have all these choices. But when we wake up, what are some of those thoughts that we should actually be rollerblading around in our mind with? What's worth deciding about? So for myself, I wake up, I'm an early morning riser. I love getting up early. I harass a lot of people because I think that's one of the best things you can do. For me, I have this little motto for myself, and I say, if I win the morning, I win the day, and I earn a nap. That's another thing. Very important news. We've got urgent news. Could have a Dad Bod podcast. Sleep is important. I take naps every day almost. But no, I wake up every single day and I have to make a decision. I have to make my first decision is, do I hit snooze? What type of a day do I want to have? Do I want to have one where I immediately just start procrastinating? That's all a snooze button is, right? And don't get me wrong, I'm not sitting and bashing anyone who hits the old 6-minute as I have or a 10-minute snooze button. But why do we start out with that decision? Next decision, what comes next? Right? Do we brush our teeth? Do we make our bed? Do we go pee first? Do we grab a cup of coffee? Do we grab our phone? Do we hop on social media? Think about it. I just listed off 15 different thoughts, 15 different choices that you have to make. And I'm not sharing this to overwhelm you, but you think about that. You immediately, every single day, you start battling with yourself and having to make these little micro decisions, as I like to call them. Micro decisions. Little decisions that make a big impact throughout your day. So for myself, that's one big decision. So waking up early for me. I would say early for me is between 5 and 6 a.m. That's a really, really good start for me. I'm starting to get back into the gym now. But I would say 5 to 6 a.m. is a good start time for me. I get up. I make my bed. That's the first thing that I do. And it's a pretty exciting thing. Actually, first thing I do is I take off my CPAP machine. Shout out to my sponsor, AirSense 10, who makes a fantastic CPAP machine. There's definitely not going to be a link in the bio, but if you need a CPAP machine, let me know. But no, I start to make all these different decisions. So brain food, immediately when you start getting up every single day, what are you starting your day off with? So if 80% of your thoughts throughout the day are negative, what are those thoughts that start to creep in? And what are those things that we can do to kind of battle away to the positive side and start winning thoughts of your day? So I think that's really, really fascinating. So for myself, it's important for me to, throughout the day, what I'm listening to. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I'm obsessed with learning. So I listen to a lot of podcasts about life. I love learning about stuff that I have no idea about. It makes me uncomfortable. It makes me be humble and admit I don't know everything. That's a choice, right? Humility is a choice. But no, I think it's so important of what we do embrace in our minds. And what music do we listen to? What shows are we watching? Are we present when we're present? So for myself, that's one thing I've been working on, is being present. I'm a big to-do list guy. So right now, as I record this podcast, I have Trello up. Hopefully another one of my sponsors. Actually, Trello, I would love to save $12 a month. If you want to sponsor this, have a Dadbod podcast. But I have a Trello doc in front of me right now, and it lists off a checklist of different talking points that I have. So for myself, being that task oriented, does it create anxiety in my mind? Am I being too task oriented? Am I not allowing my brain to kind of not function on a schedule? To have a little bit of freedom, if you will. So sometimes we just need to rewire our minds. And sometimes it starts with these little decisions. But for myself, I want to start kind of telling a story of something I went through in 2019. And that was, I ruptured my Achilles. August 8th, it was a Thursday night. I was out playing basketball with some friends. Came down with a rebound and turned to the left and heard a pop. That was my Achilles. It ruptured, which means completely rips apart. So if you think of a celery stick ripping away from your heel, that's essentially what my Achilles did. And so I went through a really, really grueling injury. It's one of the most painful and brutal sports injuries, they say, because it's a minimum of a 12-month full recovery. But I'm super grateful for going through that, because one thing I realized is it's really easy to get caught up in physical injuries. But we also have mental injuries as well that we suffer, whether it's something from our childhood, whether it's an unhealthy relationship we're trying to get out of, right? We have all these little things that are constantly distracting us. So for myself, I remember last year I was listening to this podcast. I was talking to my older brother actually about the mental side of physical injuries. Every time that you experience something physically, it has a mental impact as well. And some of you out there who are smarter than me on the science part of it can tell you, there's some type of a chemical balance or imbalance that happens when we experience pain. Something gets shot to our brain, to our heart, to all of our senses, right? So I was listening to this podcast, Dominic Cruz, who's a UFC fighter, and he had a really amazing attitude and approach about physical injuries. And he had 3 years back to back knee injuries. So I want to say, don't quote me on this, but ACL, MCL, ACL, back to back. And all 3 are pretty gnarly recovery. So you're looking at 8 to 12 months. But if you think about that back to back, that's a long 3 years of staying in that state of mind. So the first year for him, year 1 of his injury, it was really difficult. Year 2, he had to realize he had to make a decision. He no longer had control of what he calls one of the most dangerous weapons in his body, which is his physical body. So he had to switch to the other weapon in his body, which was his mind. I love that. When we have a physical injury, we sometimes have to switch over to the other weapon we have in our body, which is our mind. And right there, I had this light bulb moment. It was a huge perspective shift for me. Yes, I was in physical pain. Yes, I was struggling. Yes, I was having to do an hour, hour and a half of physical therapy every day. That was painful. But it's a perspective shift. And so you have to realize that sometimes you just have to battle these mental hurdles. And for me, the year before, I actually was in some of the best shape of my life before this injury. And I remember I was hiking in the middle of a divorce. I was hiking with a good friend, and I got up to the top of this mountain. It was like a 400, 500-mile hike up this mountain. It was a massive, massive mountain. But no, we get to the top of this mountain, and I see all these other mountains, and I start focusing on them. And I'm a man of faith, and I was praying in that moment. And I heard God say to me, Chris, stop focusing on the other mountains of your life and the problems that you're going through, and just focus on this one. So sometimes we need to isolate our problem, or we need to isolate what's distracting us. Some of you, it might be, something physical. Some of you, it might be something financial. Maybe it's a friendship. Maybe it's a marriage. Maybe it's a career or a job, or whatever that situation is. Maybe you need to isolate it and start with that one thing today. Start with that one step. For me, in that one day, I took one step mentally where I realized that, yeah, part of my body was injured, but I still had the rest of my body. And more importantly, I still had my mind. I had my heart. I had my hands. I had my eyes. I had my intuition. I had my kids. Right? I had all these things. But I had to start to slowly rewire my mind. And instead of focusing on something that was really distracting, which was a ruptured Achilles with the walking boot and crutches for 3 months, to focusing on what I do have. Focus on what I did have. It's a really, really big perspective shifter. Now, the other cool thing is within a couple of days of hearing this podcast about this kind of perspective shift, I heard I was listening to another YouTube video. I love listening to YouTube videos of little small talks, little inspirational talks. There was a Tony Robbins talk I listened to, and he was talking to this crowd, and he said, okay, I want you guys all to pay attention to red. Look around the room. You see red over there? And he points to the corner of the room. You see red over there? It's on the table. You see red over there? It's on the wall. You see red over there? It's on those napkins. Okay, now pay attention to green. Look for everything green. You see green. Some of you have your wallet out. You see money. You see someone's cell phone case. It's green. How much red do you see right now? And he paused. And in that pause, he realized he was illustrating a point to us is we see what we focus on. And so for myself, yes, I had a ruptured Achilles. But like I said, I have the rest of my body, and I had my mind and the ability to overcome things. So it was a really, really beautiful shift. And it was probably within that week or two, I realized I had to start having fun with some unfortunate circumstances. Now, some of you might be going through some challenges where you can't just joke about it and it's not something perspective. It's a constant battle. Maybe you're battling cancer. Maybe you're battling something that's not as easy as just a flip of a switch and a perspective shift. And I get that. But at the same time, I want to encourage you and also share with you that we can only control what we can control. For me, I trust God's going to take care of a lot of other things that I have going on. But I know that every single day, I have the ability to make the best of every single day. And so that brain food, focus on it. And so I want to give you something tangible to take home and chew on. Start with one thing. What is that one thing? For myself, 2 weeks ago, I had the same talk with myself. And I realized I was struggling with my faith and fitness. My faith, because I physically miss being around people who believe what I do. I haven't been to church in so many months. I don't even remember the last time I was at church. And I realized how big of an important, crucial part of my spiritual journey is being around other people and having conversations with them and being real about issues in my life. I miss that face-to-face interaction with people who are similar to me. So that was something I wanted to work on. So what did I do? I scheduled 2 lunches with 2 different friends from church that I had really good relationships with that I miss. And it's so fulfilling to sit down and have that and just be vulnerable and share that with something that I'm struggling with. The other thing is the fitness side. Have a dad bod podcast. I didn't get that from, creating a 7-minute ab workout. But no, I stress ate a lot we've been going through the coronavirus pandemic here in 2020. However you feel about that, it doesn't matter. But I stress ate. It definitely impacted my personal life. It impacted my business. It impacted relationships. It impacted stress. It impacted my mental health. And so for myself, I also made the transition to, hey, I need to get back into the gym. And fortunately enough, my gym here was open. So the first week I worked out on a basketball court that had some tarps. I ran the bike or, rode on the bike, and that's a mini victory. That was a decision. But pick one thing. What is it? Is it a relationship? Is it a conversation? Is it you're watching too much Netflix and instead you need to listen to something positive? And if you don't know what to listen to, think about what you're interested in. For myself, I love music. I love listening to musicians talk. I love comedy. I listen to so much stand-up comedy and podcast with stand-up comedians. I love getting deep. I love learning. So I listen to a lot of stuff that feeds my brain. And so for myself, that's a decision I love making. So what I've done is I research, go on Google and type in, top 10 most inspirational podcasts or movies or films or songs. Be intentional, but start with one thing. And I'd love to hear what that one thing is. If you want to use the hashtag Brainfood, hashtag Have a Dadbod podcast, I'd love to hear what that is. I'd love to hear what that is. What is that one thing that you're going to change? The other thing you might not realize is you might not be telling yourself the truth. Be honest with yourself. Some of you don't have people or you don't have friends that can speak the truth into you, and that's unfortunate. But hopefully if you're listening to this, you're a mature adult and you can make a decision, right? So what's one lie that you're telling yourself? Is it that you don't have the strength to get through what you're going through? Is it that you can't get through that, financial hurdle that you're currently going through? Is it that relationship and you don't think your partner, your spouse, your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, you don't think you can get through that hurdle? All you can control is what you can control. So I'd love to hear your feedback. Once again, use the hashtag Have a Dadbod podcast. And I hope you enjoyed episode 1, Brain Food. Episode 1, Brain Food on Have a Dadbod podcast. Where having a dad bod is okay, but having a dad bod mind isn't. Episode 1, Chris Sack, San Diego, California, signing off. Peace and hair grease.